You never forget the exact sound something makes when your world tilts on its axis. For me, it was the splat of a dumpling hitting my mother's face. We were seated in a velvet lined booth under soft golden chandeliers in a restaurant that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My boyfriend Charlie had insisted we celebrate Mother's Day somewhere special, somewhere that would make my mom feel treasured. And she did, at least until Sarah walked in. Sarah didn't walk. She entered like a queen surveying her throne room. Her heels stabbed the marble floor with purpose. Her eyes scanned the space like it was hers. And when she saw us, saw my mother's modest cardigan, her short gray hair, her wrinkled hands wrapped around a teacup, she smirked. Oh, she said loud enough for the entire room to hear, "This is who you're dining with now." Her voice was syrupy sweet laced with venom. I didn't know her, but I could feel it. She knew Charlie, and she hated what she saw. "I see the New York bank's rising star has really found his level," she sneered. "Slumming it, are we?" Charlie's hand froze on his chopsticks. I could feel him shrink just slightly like a balloon losing air. He didn't speak. Not right away. My mom, always gentle, always dignified, looked up and smiled politely. "I don't believe we've met," she said. Sarah tilted her head, faux confusion curling her lips. "Oh, how rude of me," she said. "I'm Sarah Murphy, Charlie's former boss and mentor. We worked together at the bank before he transferred, let's say. I thought he had higher standards." There it was. The insult wasn't even veiled. Charlie finally spoke, quiet, measured. "Sarah, this isn't the time." But Sarah wasn't done. People like her never are. She leaned forward, eyes locking on my mother. "And you must be the part-time cleaner he mentioned." My mother didn't flinch. She just smiled again, calm, dignified, maddeningly graceful. "I'm Jessica's mom," she said simply. "Oh, of course," Sarah laughed. "Well, I suppose some people are born to work and others are born to watch them." The words hit like glass shattering on stone. And then, without warning, Sarah reached for a dumpling from a passing tray and flicked it. Like it was a joke. Like it was funny. The dumpling hit my mother's cheek with a soft, sticky slap. Chili oil ran down her skin. Gasps echoed through the restaurant. A fork clattered. Somewhere, someone whispered, "Did she just—" I stood up so fast my chair scraped across the floor. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Sarah just laughed. "I'm sorry," she said with a shrug. "Old people in cheap fabric don't belong in places like this. I was doing you a favor." Charlie was frozen, pale, mortified. But my mom, she simply took her napkin, wiped her face, and stood. "We'll finish our meal," she said calmly, "and then we'll leave." Her voice was soft, but her eyes, God, her eyes burned with something quiet and dangerous. That night, she didn't talk much. Charlie apologized a dozen times. I kept asking if she was okay, but she just smiled, wiped her face again, and said, "People reveal themselves in the smallest actions. You learn a lot from who throws food and who just watches." I didn't understand what she meant, not then, but I would. The next day, everything changed. It started with a phone call. Charlie called me during my lunch break, his voice shaking. "Jess," he said, "I think your mom just nuked the entire New York bank." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Apparently, early that morning, my mother had called the bank and requested a full withdrawal of her deposits. All of 50 million of it. I dropped my sandwich. Charlie was still talking, panicked. The president came storming out of his office. There's chaos. Phones ringing nonstop. They said some investor named Carol Jones pulled her funds. "Jess, that's your mom, isn't it?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because suddenly everything clicked. The quiet dignity, the calm smile, the refusal to fight back. My mother didn't need to scream to destroy someone. She just needed 24 hours. That evening, we visited her. She was tying her apron, humming softly as if nothing had happened. "Baked potatoes tonight," she said. "Your favorite." Charlie looked like he was about to faint. "Did you really pull your money from the bank?" She smiled. "I did." "Why?" She looked at him, really looked. because I will not allow my money to be managed by people who insult my family. But the president is coming, Charlie stammered. With Sarah. My mom raised an eyebrow. Good, I hate unfinished business. When the doorbell rang, she opened it with the serenity of someone expecting company for tea. Sarah stood there, her perfect hair slightly disheveled, the confidence drained from her eyes. Behind her, a man in a tailored suit, older, sweating, clutched a luxury gift bag. The president? He bowed immediately. Ms. Jones, he said, please, allow us to explain. We deeply regret yesterday's. My mom held up a hand. No explanations, no excuses. The money will be transferred by the end of the month, as discussed. Sarah was shaking. Please, I didn't know who you were. That's exactly the problem, my mother said. You didn't bother to know. You judged me by my sweater and my age, not my portfolio. The president turned to Sarah, expression dark. You threw food at her. I didn't mean. You humiliated Carol Jones in public, he said, disbelief in his voice. Then I saw something I'll never forget. Sarah fell to her knees, literally, on the floor, in my mother's hallway. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. Please, I didn't mean it. I was angry. I didn't think. That much is clear, my mom said coldly. The president turned to Charlie. We'd like to offer you a senior position, he said. It's clear your integrity is exceptional. Charlie shook his head. No, thank you. I don't work for places that protect people like her. Silence. Then I asked the question that had been burning in my mind. Mr. President, did you have something with her too? He looked down. Yes, he said quietly. We were both married. But she told me we were meant to be. I was a fool. I felt sick. Sarah was staring at the floor, broken. The same woman who smirked at my mother, now sobbing in a hallway, her career in ruins, her secrets exposed. You said we were poor, my mom said. But you are bankrupt in ways that truly matter. And with that, she closed the conversation and the door on them both. That was 24 hours later. We watched them leave, Sarah heels clacking unevenly as she stumbled after the president. Her knees red from the floor, her pride shattered somewhere between the foyer and the front steps. And him once proud, once feared now, just a man carrying the weight of humiliation in a luxury gift bag that no one wanted. The door closed behind them, soft as a sigh. Inside it was quiet. My mom walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Potatoes should be ready, she said. Charlie and I stared at her. He finally found the words, You really just cost them their top investor. She raised an eyebrow, took a small taste of butter with the edge of a spoon. No, she said. They did. That night, Charlie didn't say much. He held my hand tighter than usual. We ate in silence, digesting more than food. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what had just happened, about who my mom really was, about how she had built a fortune in silence and shadows, about how people walk past women like her every day without looking twice, only to find out too late who they really are. The next morning, the story was already spreading. Charlie's phone buzzed nonstop, emails, Slack messages, whispers in the corridors of the bank, speculation mixed with awe. Apparently, Carol Jones was a legend in the investment world, whispers of market moves, traced to her decisions, rumors of hedge fund collapses after she pulled out quietly. No one knew exactly what she looked like. That was the point. Power is quieter than people think. It doesn't always show up in designer suits or business class tickets. Sometimes it wears a cardigan and clips grocery coupons. Sometimes it picks up its grandkids from school in a beat-up Toyota and holds the global economy in its purse. And Sarah didn't come to work that day, or the day after. By the end of the week, word had gotten out she'd been terminated. There's no press release, no formal statement. Just a quiet erasure, her name removed from internal directories, her office door locked and cleared out overnight. But the rumors kept spreading. Apparently someone no one knew who had tipped off HR about Sarah's long trail of inappropriate relationships inside the bank. With married superiors, with clients, with executives who at the time had thought they were untouchable. One of those wives had found out, and unlike my mother, she wasn't interested in dignity. She wanted retribution. Divorce papers were filed, publicly, brutally. Sarah's assets were frozen, investigations launched. A second lawsuit from another wife appeared within days. She had used people, slept her way up the ladder, and the moment she slipped, every rung of that ladder snapped beneath her. Charlie was offered a promotion by week's end. Officially, it was because of his exemplary handling of client relationships. But everyone knew the truth. He had survived Sarah, and my mother had endorsed him. One afternoon, Charlie came home holding a thin envelope. He opened it slowly, revealing a handwritten letter from the bank's board. It said, "Your quiet professionalism in a moment of unprecedented disruption reflects the values we wish to cultivate. Should you consider staying long term, we would be honored to invest in your growth." Charlie didn't say anything. He folded the letter, set it down, and looked at me with a strange kind of guilt in his eyes. "I didn't stand up for her," he said. "For who?" "Your mom, that night, at the restaurant. I should have gotten up. I should have stopped it." "You froze," I said softly. "So did I. That doesn't make us bad people, just unprepared." He nodded, but she wasn't. No, she wasn't. A week later, my mom invited us back to the same restaurant. The same chandeliers, the same golden plates. But this time, no drama, just peace. I asked her that night as we were leaving, "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" She smiled. "Would it have changed how you saw me?" "No," I said, "but I would have understood more." She looked out at the parking lot, the street lights catching in her eyes. "There's power in being underestimated, Jess. It lets you see who people really are." Then she turned and added, "And when people show you who they are, believe them." I never forgot that. But the story wasn't over, because Sarah didn't disappear quietly. You can't feed a person's ego for decades and expect them to go down without one last desperate scream. 3 weeks after she lost her job, she posted on LinkedIn a long, bitter essay titled, "When the System Turns on Its Own, My Fall from Grace." In it, she claimed she had been betrayed, that she was the victim of a smear campaign, that certain investors had abused their influence for personal revenge. She never said my mom's name, but everyone knew. The comments started as supportive. Then someone leaked the internal HR report and the screenshots, conversations, DMs, calendar invites, emails with subject lines that read like tabloid headlines: "Dinner again. Your place or mine. Don't worry, he won't find out." It was damning. She deleted the post, but it was too late. Screenshots live forever. A month later, Charlie got a text from an old coworker. "You'll never believe what just happened." Apparently, Sarah's now ex-husband had filed for full custody of their children and won. He presented not only the affair documentation, but also testimonies from her former lovers' wives, claiming Sarah had tried to intimidate them into silence. She was labeled morally negligent. She lost visitation rights. And with that, she lost everything else too. There's a strange kind of silence that follows destruction, a stillness in the air after the building collapses, but before the dust settles. Sarah became that silence. People whispered her name, but no one saw her. The last anyone heard, she was staying with an old college friend, living off what little savings hadn't been seized for legal fees or alimony. And then nothing. She vanished. Meanwhile, life moved on. My mom's deposit on $50 million landed neatly in Charlie's bank. The transfer was smooth, no delays, no friction. It was a message, a quiet endorsement. Charlie was stunned. "She trusts me," he asked one night. "She sees who you are," I said. A pause. "Then do you—" I looked at him. Really looked. He wasn't perfect. He froze that night. He'd had doubts, but he had never looked down on my mom. He never laughed at her shoes or her wrinkles or the way she still carried cash in her wallet. He saw her and he stayed. "Yes," I said, "I do." A few months later, he proposed. Not in a flashy way. No fireworks, no camera crew hiding in bushes. Just us on a bench. The ring tucked inside a fortune cookie he slipped into my plate. It said, "Some things are more valuable than money. Marry me." I cried. We told my mom the next day. She smiled, nodded, and said, "About time." But then she added, "Just so we're clear, if you two ever break up, I'm keeping Charlie as my banker." "Mom? I'm serious. I like his honesty." Charlie blushed. "I promise not to break up, ever." "Promises are cheap," she said, sipping her tea. but integrity that's priceless. And there it was. The lesson beneath everything. Not revenge, not power, not money, but integrity. That night, I looked in the mirror at the same restaurant where a dumpling once flew across the room. I saw my face in the reflection, older now wiser. And behind me, my mother, still standing, still graceful, still undefeated. Stories like this, where justice is swift, poetic, and perfectly timed, aren't supposed to happen in real life. They're supposed to stay in movies, in novels, in those stories we share at dinner parties, with a you won't believe what happened next. But somehow our quiet little life had turned into one of them. Not because we sought revenge, but because someone made the mistake of mistaking dignity for weakness. And now the world was watching. It started with whispers in the banking world. Then came the blogs. Finance insiders started speculating on the sudden departure of Sarah Murphy, once a rising executive at one of the most respected banks in New York. Then the story leaked to a niche financial podcast. They didn't name names, just a title. When You Insult the Wrong Old Lady, the 150 Me Nowder Fallout. Charlie and I listened to it in bed one night. I watched his face as the host described a situation eerily similar to ours, how a powerful investor had quietly dismantled a career in under 24 hours. They're talking about your mom, he said, eyes wide. I know. A week later, the headline hit a national site. Humiliated by Dumpling, Empowered by Billions, The Mystery of Carol Jones. I choked on my coffee. Charlie turned pale. The article had pieced it all together. No names were confirmed, but it didn't take a genius to connect the dots. The public was fascinated not by the financial implications, but by the story, by the imagery. A woman insulted in public, belittled for her age and presumed poverty, only to reveal herself as one of the wealthiest private investors in the country. The world devours stories like that. But what they didn't see, what no headline captured, was what happened after. Because power changes people, but so does exposure. And not just for Sarah. For me, I couldn't walk into work without feeling different. Not because anyone treated me differently, but because I did. Before, I was just another face in the office, head down, efficient, invisible. But now people ask me questions they never had before. What's your opinion on this budget plan, Jessica? Would you be willing to lead the next proposal? Do you want to speak at the next client briefing? It wasn't because they knew my mother, most of them didn't. It was because I had changed. My posture, my tone, the way I looked people in the eye. Confidence isn't something you're born with, it's something you earn. And I had earned mine watching my mother remind the world who she was without ever raising her voice. One afternoon, my manager pulled me aside. I heard you might be leaving, she said. I blinked. What? There's a rumor going around that you're starting your own consulting firm, that you're building something. I laughed. Where on earth did that come from? She smiled. From how you walk into a room now. I didn't answer. Because part of me had thought about it. What would it look like, I wondered, to stop hiding instability and step into something more, my mother must have sensed it. Because one evening, as we sat in her living room watching the sun melt into the skyline, she turned to me and said, Are you happy? The question was simple, but the weight of it settled into my chest. I don't know, I admitted. Then it's time to find out. Doing what, starting a business? Becoming a billionaire investor like you? She smiled. No, just becoming someone you're not afraid to be seen as. That stayed with me. Meanwhile, Sarah's downfall deepened. One of Charlie's old colleagues, someone still working at the New York bank, texted him a photo. It was Sarah. Not a paparazzi shot, not a scandalous image. Just her. Walking down the street in a puffy jacket, hair undone, no makeup, eyes sunken. Underneath was the caption, Funny how the mighty fall, huh? Charlie didn't laugh. He just stared at the image for a long time, then said quietly, She looks tired. She's paying for what she did. He nodded, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. That surprised me. Do you feel sorry for her? He took a long breath. I feel sorry for the version of her that could have been, the one who didn't need to destroy others to feel powerful. That was Charlie, always seeing the gray in people, even when the world wanted things black and white. He hadn't forgiven her, but he hadn't erased her humanity either. That's why I loved him. A month later, we were having lunch at a tiny cafe near the bank when a woman approached our table. I didn't recognize her, but Charlie did. It was another one of Sarah's proteges, a woman named Denise who had once been mentored by her and nearly crushed by her, too. She hesitated, hands trembling slightly. Charlie, she said, I just wanted to say thank you. For what? For surviving her and for speaking up. People always said she was tough, brilliant, but no one wanted to say she was dangerous until you. He shook his head. I didn't do anything. You didn't have to, she replied. You just didn't lie. She turned to me. And your mom, she's a hero. She's just a mom, I smiled. No, Denise said. She's proof. Of what? That quiet women are not weak women. And that karma knows how to wear pearls. I laughed. But it stayed with me because even though Sarah was gone, her shadow lingered. Not as a threat, but as a reminder. That cruelty always comes with a cost. And that dignity isn't about being passive. It's about knowing exactly when to strike and how to do it without lowering yourself. A few weeks later, Charlie and I went back to the restaurant. The same one. Same red lantern, same golden light. But this time, we brought my mom again. No dumplings were thrown, no words were exchanged with enemies. Just peace. We toasted to nothing in particular. We talked about everything and nothing. And then toward the end of the meal, my mom looked at me and said, you know, if you ever leave Charlie, I will keep him as my banker. I groaned. Mom, I'm just saying, she teased. You don't find integrity like his every day. Charlie blushed. You're not so bad yourself, Mrs. Jones, he replied. She raised an eyebrow. Don't call me Mrs. Jones. Makes me feel old. I thought that was your weapon, I said. Letting them think you're old so they let their guard down. She laughed. True. But a woman can be both underestimated and still have standards. The bill came. Charlie reached for it. My mom stopped him. This one's on me, she said. Consider it a refund. A refund for what? For the dumpling incident, she smiled. I laughed so hard I nearly knocked over my glass. And in that moment, everything felt whole again. Not perfect, not flawless, but whole. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't making someone fall. It's rising so high they can't even see you anymore. The thing about silence, real silence, is that it doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means transition, the air between two chapters of a life holding its breath. And that's where I found myself in the weeks after everything came crashing down, standing at the edge of something new, unsure whether to leap or stay safely behind. My job was fine. My relationship was wonderful. My life from the outside was what people call settled. But inside me, something was stirring. I kept thinking about my mother, how she'd built an empire from the shadows, how she'd worn her humility like armor, how she'd destroyed someone's career and marriage with a single phone call. Not out of malice, but because she refused to let people dishonor her family. I started to ask questions of myself, of the life I'd designed around safety. Was I living my mother's legacy or hiding behind it? Then one Sunday afternoon, she called. Come over, she said. I have something to show you. I brought a bottle of wine. She brought out a dusty old box from the hallway closet, one I'd never seen before. What is this? She sat across from me at the kitchen table and opened the lid. Inside were documents, photos, handwritten notes, stock certificates, newspaper clippings from the 90s. This, she said, is where it all began. She pulled out a photo, a young version of her, maybe 25, standing in front of a rental apartment with a baby in her arms. Me. Your father had just passed, she said, and I had exactly 340 to my name. I remember the number. I counted it 10 times. It felt like a cliff, like the edge of a world I didn't know how to live in. I stayed quiet, letting her speak. I didn't have any fancy degrees. I didn't have family money. What I had was curiosity and anger. Anger, I asked. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind that simmers under your ribs. The kind that wakes you up at 3 a.m. and whispers, you don't get to give up. Not yet. She pulled out a letter. A thank you note from some small firm in the early 2000s. Apparently, she'd predicted a market shift 2 months before it happened and saved them millions. No one knew my name, she said. They still don't. That's the advantage of being underestimated. You get to build without being watched. I ran my hand over the paper, her handwriting, her notes on risk, on timing, on human behavior. You taught yourself all this, I whispered. She smiled. When the world won't open a door for you, you learn how to pick locks. That line stayed with me for weeks because I had been waiting for permission to lead, to build, to live loudly. But maybe what I needed was to stop waiting altogether. So I did something I hadn't done in 10 years. I quit my job. My manager looked stunned. Why? Because I've been doing what I'm good at, I said, but not what I'm meant for. And then I started over with a borrowed desk, a laptop, a Google Doc named Phase 1. I called it Jones and Light, a boutique strategy firm focused on ethical leadership, small business investment, and restoring dignity in corporate structures. It didn't have a flashy office, or seed funding, or investors knocking down the door, but it had a story, a truth, a foundation built on quiet strength. And it had my mother. She agreed to be my silent partner on one condition. I don't do meetings, she said, and I'm not dressing up. Deal. We launched small, 2 clients, then 5. Then, a month later, one of them introduced us to a nonprofit in need of restructuring. We doubled their funding in 90 days. Word got around. Apparently, having the backing of a mysterious investor with a reputation for ethical ruthlessness was enough to make people listen. We didn't just grow, we flourished. And I did too. I spoke at conferences, advised boards, helped companies rebuild from the inside out, not just with data, but with soul. Because somewhere along the way, I realized the story with Sarah wasn't just about revenge. It was a mirror, a reminder that every business, every leader, every brand sooner or later will be faced with a moment where they have to choose between arrogance, integrity. And the ones who choose wrong, they don't just lose money, they lose everything. One day after a speaking event, a young woman came up to me, nervous, hopeful. "You're Jessica Jones, right?" she asked. I nodded. "Did your mom really, take down Sarah Murphy?" I smiled. "No, Sarah took down herself. My mom just refused to look away." The girl bit her lip. "I want to be like her." "You already are," I said. "You showed up, you asked." We exchanged emails. Later that night, I told my mom. "She reminds me of you at 22, I said. My mother raised her glass, then she'll be just fine." We clinked. Outside, the world moved on. People went to work, took trains, paid rent, laughed, fought, dreamed. And Sarah, no one heard from her again. Some say she moved out of state. Others claim she changed her name, started over. But the truth, it doesn't matter, because her name became a lesson, not just in banks or boardrooms, but in households like mine, in conversations between mothers and daughters, between mentors and mentees, between who you are and who you refuse to become. And that's the kind of power that never fades. 3 months after the dumpling incident, we returned to the restaurant. Same red lanterns, same gold-rimmed plates, same velvet booths that used to feel intimidating. But that night, they just felt warm, familiar. It was me, Charlie, and my mom, just like before. Only this time, there was no tension, no false smiles, no knives behind sweet words. Only a quiet table, a bottle of wine, and the sound of ceramic spoons tapping gently against porcelain bowls. "This place has good dumplings," my mom said, and we all burst out laughing. Charlie covered his mouth with his napkin. "Too soon, Mrs. Jones, too soon." She winked. "Never too soon for humor. That's how you keep your pride from turning into poison." I looked at her, really looked. She hadn't changed. Same soft sweater, same sensible shoes, same face etched with decades of perseverance. But now I saw her differently. Not because of what she did, though, but because of what she didn't. She didn't scream. She didn't fight fire with fire. She didn't need to humiliate Sarah in public. She simply revealed the truth and let gravity do the rest. That's a different kind of power. The rare kind. "Jessica," she said, sipping her tea, "what do you see when you look at yourself?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "In the mirror, First thing in the morning, what do you see? I paused, then answered a woman who finally stopped being afraid. She smiled. That's good, because fear will dress itself up as reason, as humility, even as kindness. But it's still fear, and fear doesn't deserve a seat at your table. I swallowed hard. Charlie reached for my hand under the table. The waiter brought dessert, some kind of almond pudding with shaved ice and dried long gone. It was the kind of thing I never ordered but somehow loved. My mother took a bite, then said almost too casually, "You know, I never told you how I became Carol Jones. I assumed you were born with it." She chuckled. "No, I was born Carol Tran, immigrant parents, 3 jobs, no weekends. I became Jones after your father." But becoming Carol Jones, she paused. That was a decision. A decision, yes, to stop being invisible. She stirred her pudding slowly, as if drawing maps into the sweetness. I realized one day no one was going to hand me a crown. No one was coming to validate my worth. So I stopped waiting. I stopped asking for space. I took it, quietly, without apology. "And you never looked back?" I asked. "I looked back once," she said, "right after your dad died. I almost gave up. But then you cried so hard one night, so loud, so broken, I realized, if I quit, who teaches you how to stand up?" My throat tightened. "You didn't just raise me," I whispered. "You shaped me." She smiled without pride, just quiet knowing. No daughter should have to teach herself how to hold power gently. That's a mother's job. Charlie was silent. I think he knew this was one of those moments meant for women, for blood, for legacy, for memory that lives inside DNA. The check came. Again, my mom reached for it. "This one's on me," she said. I thought the last one was a refund, I teased. "This one's interest." We walked out of the restaurant into a warm summer night. The sky above us, clear stars blinking like secrets we hadn't earned yet. On the sidewalk, my mom paused. "You know what the real lesson was?" I turned. "Don't let people tell you who you are, especially not people who need to belittle others to feel tall." I nodded. "Sarah thought I was weak because I worked part-time," she said. "But I didn't work for money. I worked to stay grounded, to remind myself that I was more than my wealth, that I could still show up, still contribute, still belong to something real." I took her hand. "You don't have to prove anything anymore," I said. "I'm not proving anything," she smiled. "I'm passing it on." We said goodbye on the curb. She got into her small, slightly beat up sedan, still refusing to buy a new car, despite being able to purchase the entire block, and waved. As the car drove off, I looked at her shrinking figure and felt something anchor in me. Not sadness, not nostalgia, but continuity. A sense that something sacred had been handed down not through money or titles, but through choice. The choice to be kind without being naive, to be strong without being cruel, to be powerful without needing anyone to know. Later that night, I stood in front of my mirror. Same hair, same face, same body. But something had shifted. I wasn't just Jessica anymore. I was the daughter of a woman who once had 340 to her name and became the silent force that made titans tremble. I was the woman who watched someone throw a dumpling in her mother's face and witnessed that mother rise not with revenge but with resolve. And now I was ready to carry that forward, not with noise, not with fire, but with stillness. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay silent just long enough for the truth to echo louder than a scream.